So should Christians prep? That's a big question, and there's a lot of people out there, a lot of Christians who are looking for an answer to that. And being the editor of Prepper Website and the host of the Prepper Website podcast, I get that question a lot. And so I wanted to create a video to share my answer on that. Now, I believe that there's one reason why Christians don't like to prep or don't feel like they should prep, and I'm going to get to that. But first, let me just talk a little bit about this to kind of lead up to that final answer. So, should Christians prep? Yes, they should. That's the short, easy answer. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the arguments. The biggest argument that I always hear is that Christians are going to be raptured. Now, for those of you that are watching that are not Christians, a rapture means that at some point Jesus is going to take those that are Christians, those that have given their life over to him, and is going to take them out of the world, right? And so the question is, when does that happen? Does that happen before the last days of tribulation? So is there a pre-tribulation rapture, or does it happen in the middle of the tribulation? And that's one of the big arguments that a lot of Christians have, because it's like, hey, boom, if it happens pre-trib, so the last days and all this crazy stuff that's supposed to happen in the last days, then we're going to be taken out. Then why even prep? That's just waste of time and effort and money and all that kind of stuff, because we're not going to even be here. The other side of that is, if it's going to happen in the middle, well then yeah, we're going to be affected by the tribulation, and there should be some reasons why we prep. There should be some supplies that we have, because we're going to go through this time, and if that happens, it could be 3.5 years, give or take, whatever. So that's one of the big arguments here. Now, this video is not about giving you all the arguments for or against a pre-trib rapture or a mid-trib rapture. That's not the issue here. There's plenty of information on the internet. You can go do a search and you can get plenty of videos and information and articles and all that kind of stuff. Let me just talk a little bit about the preparedness side of it. A lot of the times when people bring that up, they're thinking about the last days, like, boom, this is it, crazy things are happening, right? The end of the world as we know it. The thing is, that's not the reason why we prep. That's not the reason why most people prep. There's some preppers that are out there doing that, but for the most part, there are so many things that happen in life that it means common sense. It's common sense to prep and to be prepared for all the things that life has to throw at you. So going back to the rapture thing, one of the sayings is prepare like, or hope for a pre-trib rapture, but prepare like you're going to go through the rapture, or you're going to go through part of the rapture. But let's talk about the other aspect of it. Life happens. And until that day happens, until the last day, whatever happens, whether it's pre-trib, mid-trib, whatever, all that kind of stuff, life is happening. Should we prep? Is it a lack of faith for Christians to prep? Now, I think if you look at the Bible and you look at different people who have prepped, or different stories in there, it's very clear that other believers, other people who believed in God prepped. So we can always go back to Noah. And Noah, we know that he had the flood. He had to prep because he was going to be, the whole earth was going to be flooded. There wasn't going to be food, so he had to prepare. He and his family had to prepare not only food for himself and for his family, but also for all the animals as well. So Joseph is another example that a lot of Christian preppers always talk about. That he understood the times. He knew that there was going to be a time that there was going to be hard times, or that there was going to be a famine. So he was charged by by the Pharaoh of Egypt to go ahead and prep. So they had 7 years of good, good crops and of plenty and abundance, and then they had 7 years of famine. And because he prepped, then he was able to not only save all of Egypt, but he was able to save his family as well. Just recently I was reading in 2 Chronicles about Hezekiah. When Hezekiah was king of Judah, and he was king of Assyria was coming up against him. one of the things that he did is he just didn't say, hey, you know what, we're just going to leave this all up to God. I mean, part of that was he prayed and all that, but they also stopped up the water wells, and they did all that kind of stuff, so that when the king of Assyria, when the Assyrian army came, that didn't have access to water. And one of the other things that he did was he channeled the water to make it come through Jerusalem, so that they had water inside the city, so that that was something very precious, something that they needed. So he was thinking ahead of the time, and he was preparing ahead of the time. And you find that over and over. There's other stories in the Bible that we can kind of pull from, but it just makes sense that people would do that. So as a Christian, I trust in God, I have faith in God, but God has given me a brain to be able to use to say, hey, you know what, there are hard times out there. There's that story that joke that I always hear, that a guy, there was a big flood coming, and there was a Christian, and he believed that God was going to save him. And so the police were coming around, the firemen were coming around and saying, sir, you need to evacuate because there's going to be a big flood, never before in history. And he says, no, you know what, God's going to take care of me. And so he winds up, that they leave, and then a little bit later on, the flood waters start rising, and someone comes in a boat and says, sir, you need to evacuate. The flood waters are rising, you can get hurt. He goes, no, don't worry, God's going to take care of me. And then he gets on his roof because the flood waters are almost engulfed his whole house, and a helicopter comes, and they drop a ladder down and say, sir, get on the ladder and come on into the helicopter. We're going to evacuate you. He says, no, don't worry about it. God's going to save me. Well, then he dies in the flood. He goes up to heaven, and he says, God, what happened? I had faith in you. I trusted in you. What happened? Why didn't you save me? And then God's like, I sent you, the police and the firemen to tell you to evacuate. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter, and you didn't listen, right? And we see that a lot of the times in the biblical record as well. Plenty of times where the people of Israel did not listen to the prophets that were out there, that were saying, hey, you need to be ready to listen to God and to react to God and make sure that you're living your life right. So that's very, very important as Christians. We need to do that, but God has given us a brain to use to make sure that we do that. Now, here we go. Prepping, maybe we shouldn't call it prepping then, right? Prepping, preparedness, emergency preparedness, all that kind of stuff brings a lot of different connotations to people when they hear that. The fact is that right now, if you needed something, you could go to the store. It could be midnight. You're watching this at midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. You can go to the store and you can buy whatever you want. That's great. That's not the way it used to be, right? Our ancestors, they had to use common sense. They didn't have 24/7, stores that they could go to. They had to prepare. There was a time where they harvested their crops, and they knew that there was going to be a winter time where they weren't going to be able to do any gardening or harvesting or farming or anything like that. So they had to prepare for the winter time. And they were prepping. It just wasn't called prepping. It was just called common sense, using your brain. And so if you think about things that have happened, if you look at hurricanes, when hurricanes come along and, shelves are wiped out, or there's a blizzard when you're up north and there's a blizzard and, shelves are wiped out. That's because people are, they want to make sure that they have food for themselves, because a lot of people don't store. They're not prepared. So when something like this happens, they go to the store, they rush there, and then everything is wiped out. Now, here's the thing to remember. A lot of the times that's regional. That happens up north where there's going to be a blizzard. That happens down south, or on the coast where there's going to be a hurricane. But if there was something that happened, wide, nationwide, all the stores would be completely out. You couldn't get anything. We live in a world that is called just-in-time groceries, right? So you buy something at the grocery store, the inventory, the computer sends it to the warehouse and say, someone just bought a can of soup. The next day, a truck arrives with a can of soup to replace that. But in a situation where that's not happening, that just-in-time delivery is not happening, and people are going to not have food to eat. And when you're talking about looking at your family, and you're looking at your kids, and you're looking at your spouse, and you don't have an answer to them being hungry, that's not a good place to be. So it's just smart to be a little bit prepared. Now, why don't Christians get prepared? Why do Christians, they say, hey, I'm just going to have faith in God. Why do they do that instead of using the brains that God has given them? Here's the real reason. It's fear. The reason that Christian preppers or Christian people do not prep is because they fear. They don't want to think about a time where it's going to be not normal. They don't want to think about a time where they're not going to be able to go to the store. They rather just put that out of their mind and continue going on regular life without thinking about that. The problem is that if that time happens, then they're going to be stuck. Then you're going to be looking at your spouse. Then you're going to be looking at your kids, and you're going to be saying, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to feed you. I don't have anything prepared. I don't have a way to keep us warm. I don't have a way to keep the lights on or to have, any kind of illumination or anything like that. So being prepared is just smart. Whether it is for the big end of the world type stuff, or whether it is just something localized, whether it is just a natural disaster that happens, whether it's a job loss, whether the lights go out for whatever reason for a couple of days, you're able to cook and you're able to walk around your house, you're able to stay warm. It's just smart. So if you are watching this and maybe someone has shared this with you and you're a believer and maybe you're like, okay, maybe there is something to this preparedness thing. I'm going to link to a video that talks a little bit about how you can easily prepare your food storage. So I'm going to link to it. It's going to be at the top and you can just click on it and you can go watch that. Now, if you want a little bit more, I have a free video lesson that has 3 worksheets. One of the worksheets is like a 40-minute long video lesson. And one of the worksheets will allow you to walk through. So it's a fill in the blank as you're going, as you're watching this video. And I also have 2 other worksheets that will help you to get your food pantry prepared. And so that's just an easy link. I'm going to link that in the show notes, and so you can go check that out. And you can watch this video and then think for yourself, is this something that I should be doing? Is this something that I should possibly be preparing? It's not hard to prepare. It's just smart. It's just common sense. So should Christians prepare? Yes. Are you possibly preparing for the end of the world? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, it's a good idea to be prepared. Could there be something that happens that you should be prepared for, like a hurricane or tornadoes or blizzards or a job loss or whatever it might be? Yes, that's even more common, and you should be a little prepared. It does not hurt to be prepared. So guys, I hope that's been a blessing to you. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to link to the video. I'm going to link to the video lesson. If you want the longer version, it's free. I'm going to link to that down below in the video description. And I hope that you will go and take a part of this. If you have any questions, leave some comments for me. Like our video, click the little bell so you can be notified that that whenever we put out another video, and you can also subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for watching. God bless.